So I bet many of you either have a dog or know someone that has a dog, and if you have a dog, you may consider that dog to be a part of your family. This is my dog, Surrey, and she definitely is a part of my family. I don't have children yet, so right now Surrey is my child. She hangs out on the couch with me. She goes to daycare as if she's a child. So she's definitely a family member. And research has shown lately that having these animals as a part of our lives is so beneficial. It can increase your fitness, it can give you better mental health, so it's so wonderful, and that's why I love having her around. However, as these animals become more integrated into our lives and as we start viewing them as family members, it's sometimes really easy to forget that they still are animals, which means they can be carrying all sorts of things that they can pass on to us. So as many good things as they can give us, they can also give us some bad things, such as zoonotic diseases. Zoonotic diseases are infectious diseases that animals can transmit to us. So you may take your dog to the vet every year and wonder, why in the world does this dog need vaccinations every single year? Even when they're 14, we're still going to the vet and vaccinating them. Well, as much as it's to protect their health, it's really to protect public health as well. A zoonotic disease that many people are familiar with is rabies, and your dog gets a rabies vaccination either every year or every 3 years. And as much as that is to protect them, it's also really to protect us, because here in the United States, if you get bit by a dog, you don't automatically think rabies. We think of rabies being associated with bats and rabid raccoons and animals like that, but we don't think dogs, and that's because we've done such a good job vaccinating them. So Surrey goes and gets her vaccines every year, and she's on preventatives because it's to protect her health, but it's also to protect mine. So a zoonotic disease that's been increasing in frequency in the United States is leptospirosis, and a lot of you may have seen it in the media lately. There's been a lot of articles popping up, sending people into a frenzy about, oh my goodness, can my dog get this? And we've been really concerned about it because we have seen it in the past, and it's all over the world. But lately, we've been seeing an increase in it in the United States, which is very concerning. And it can affect a ton of different animals, like dogs, cats, livestock, and it can affect us, which is why we're concerned about it as a zoonotic disease. And it's carried by wildlife and rodents, like mice and rats. And the problem is they shed this in their urine, and it's a bacterial disease. And when you're probably wondering, well, how in the world am I going to come in contact with the urine of an infected rat when I'm just minding my own business here in Columbus? And the problem with leptospirosis is it survives really, really well in the environment, which is not good for us. So if this rat goes and urinates into a body of water and you go and swim in it, well, fortunately, you now may be exposed to the bacteria, and that's why with people and in human medicine, we oftentimes associate leptospirosis with people going on vacation and swimming in watering holes in these beautiful tropical environments because it's so common in tropical areas. And the bacteria, if you have an open cut or scrape, or if it gets into your mucous membranes, then it penetrates your body, and that's how you become infected with it. And our animals can get it by being bit by an infected animal and also ingesting tissues. And they also can get it as well by open cuts and scrapes and in their mucous membranes. So the average incubation period is about 5 to 14 days, but it can be a little longer. And as with many zoonotic diseases that companion animals carry, the biggest problem with them is their symptoms are so nonspecific. And the same is for leptospirosis. So in dogs, we often see them becoming lethargic, or they may want to eat. And these signs that they're showing us, your first thought probably isn't, oh my goodness, they probably have leptospirosis. It could be so many different things, and it's the same in people. The symptoms are very mild and very nonspecific, like a headache, vomiting, diarrhea, and if left untreated, it can progress to more severe symptoms such as pulmonary hemorrhage and renal failure, and it can lead to death in animals and people, which is why we're really concerned about this right now. So now you may be wondering, well, you're telling me that I can get this from my dog here in Columbus. That seems a little extreme. And it is to an extent, but it also is very possible. And we don't often think about zoonotic diseases in companion animals being present in the United States and in urban environments. But the problem with leptospirosis is since wildlife, such as rats and mice, can carry this disease, well, we have these wildlife here in an urban setting in Columbus, and it is possible that your dog can get it and then pass it on to you. And I'm going to show you how. And it's not to scare anyone. The chances of this happening are really, really slim. But it's good to understand that these diseases we talk about it's not a crazy thought that your animal could get it and pass it on to you. So we have this rat here that's infected with leptospirosis, and one night after a really heavy rainfall, he wanders into one of the dog parks in downtown Columbus, and he urinates near this mud puddle that's formed in the park. So the next day I go with Surrey, and Surrey loves water. As soon as she sees it, she beelines right to it, whether it be a lake or a mud puddle, and I cannot get her out of it. So she's rolling around in this mud, and I have no idea that this infected rat urinated in it the night before, and this puddle is full of Leptospira bacteria. She's getting it in her mouth, in her eyes. She gets it everywhere when we go to the park. So now Surrey has Leptospirosis. So a few weeks later, Surrey seems a little tired, but we've been doing a lot, so I don't think much of it. And I get home from work one day, and she's so excited to see me. And if you have dogs, you may have this problem too. When Surrey's super, super excited to see me, sometimes she'll urinate a little bit because she's just so overexcited. So she urinates a little bit on the floor, and now I have this little bit of urine on my floor with the bacteria in it. I still have absolutely no idea that she's carrying this bacteria. And I got in a paper cut an hour before, don't remember, because we don't think about paper cuts always as being open wounds, but I now have this open wound I'm not thinking about on my finger, and I go to clean up the urine. It's just a little bit, so I wipe it up with a paper towel, don't think much of it, and that bacteria is now in my cut, and now Surrey and I both have leptospirosis. So as much as we think of these diseases being such extreme circumstances that our companion animals can get it and then give it to us, it definitely is possible. So what are we doing to address this problem of leptospirosis, the increase of it in the United States? First, we're trying to identify where the recent hotspots of canine leptospirosis are in the United States. We know from studies prior in other years, we kind of have a general idea of the areas we'd be concerned about in the United States, but this disease is changing rapidly, so we want to know what's happening now. Where are the areas we're seeing it the most, and what time periods are we seeing it the most? Because since it's very related to rainfall and temperature, we see geographic differences and also differences throughout the year. So we acquired a data set from IDEXX Laboratories, who they receive samples from veterinarians all across the United States. And the data we were looking at were the PCR data. There's many other ways to test for leptospirosis, but for now we're focusing on PCR. So we have this huge data set of all these dogs across the United States in 2015 and 2016 that were tested for leptospirosis, and a little bit of information about the dog, the veterinary clinic they came from, and whether they were positive and negative. So we were able to map all of these tests on a map to see which states are popping up. Really, where are we seeing this the most in recent years? So you can see the cooler colors show a lower test positive prevalence. The warmer colors show a higher test positive prevalence. And traditionally, in other studies, we've found that leptospirosis in canines is focused in the South Central US, the Midwest, the West Coast, and the Northeast. And in 2015, we really saw it focused in the South Central and lower Midwest. And then you flip to 2016, and you see it change a lot, which is really interesting about this disease. It can change so rapidly. So here you see states like Texas, Arizona all of a sudden is popping up as being a hotspot in 2016. Some of you may have heard of the outbreak in dogs in Arizona. There were over 70 dogs that were infected with leptospirosis in Arizona in 2016. So that's why we're seeing it pop up here. And we also still see it a little bit in the Midwest. But interestingly, we don't really see the West Coast and the Northeast highlighted in 2015 and 2016. So we do see that this disease is starting to change a little bit from what we've previously thought. And we also looked at seasonal and regional differences of leptospirosis, because like I said, it's very influenced by temperature and rainfall. And we usually think of this disease popping up in the late fall and early winter because there's heavy rain and high temperatures in the summer across the United States. So dogs are more at risk in the summer to acquire the bacteria and then are being tested for it and showing positive in the late fall and early winter. And we do see that in some of the regions, like the eastern region and the central region. But interestingly, we found that in somewhere like the southern region, we kind of see this prevalence continuous throughout the whole entire year. And understanding where it's popping up and when it's popping up is really important, because we really want to get at dog owners and educate them on what to be looking for, what the risk factors are, what they can do to prevent their dog from getting this and then giving it to them and their families. And in order to do that, we need to understand what areas to target and when to target. So that's what all of this information is kind of starting to put together for us, where the information needs to be disseminated and at what time of the year. So now that we understand where these hotspots are and when they're occurring throughout the year, our next task was to look at what's influencing them. Why are some regions of the United States having higher cases of leptospirosis compared to other regions? So we got a bunch of variables from publicly available data sources and merged it with the data from IDEXX on the cases and all the dogs that were tested. and we ran generalized mixed logistic regression models to try to understand what variables are statistically significantly associated with a dog testing positive for leptospirosis. And we found that season, as we expected, was related to a dog testing positive for leptospirosis, like the late fall and early winter. We also found that male dogs had a higher odds of testing positive for leptospirosis compared to female dogs. And this has been found previously, and they actually found that male dogs are more commonly working dogs. So they're out on the farms, they're out in the field hunting, and they're more likely to come in contact with this wildlife that's carrying the bacteria. We also found that dogs 4 years of age or younger had a higher odds of testing positive for leptospirosis compared to dogs that were older than 4 years of age. This could be related again to dogs that are younger, more commonly being used as working dogs. And I think also dogs that are younger, you take them out and do more things with them. Like Surrey's only a year old, so we don't go to the dog park for me, we go to the dog park because she needs to run off all that energy and stop being a maniac. So I think that's part of that. And then we also found that higher temperature and higher precipitation also increase the odds of a dog testing positive if they came from a region where there were higher temperatures and higher precipitation, which is what we were expecting to find. So now we know where these cases are occurring. We kind of have a general idea of what's influencing these hot spots. So our next step is to understand what is going on at the dog level, because that's really what's going to be meaningful. Why are some dogs testing positive for leptospirosis and other dogs are not? So we're in the process right now of designing a case control study where we're going to recruit veterinary clinics in these hotspot areas and target dog owners that both have had their dog test positive for leptospirosis and dogs that have not, and give them a survey to understand, has your dog had contact with wildlife in the past? Are you taking them to the dog park and letting them swim in stagnant bodies of water every week? And try to get a detailed look at really what is going on and why are some dogs getting this disease in the United States and others aren't, because that's really important to understand right now. So what you can do, luckily there is a vaccine available for leptospirosis in the United States. Unfortunately, there's a ton of different serovars, and this vaccine only protects against 4. So your dog can be vaccinated and still get leptospirosis. But I think if you have a dog that you've identified at risk, any protection is better than no protection. As you saw, Surrey is a very at-risk dog since she loves the mud and she loves water. So Surrey is vaccinated for leptospirosis. And also, I think just understanding transmission opportunities and knowing the signs, since this is a disease where the symptoms are really nonspecific, now that you have this knowledge of how dogs can get it and what to look for, if your dog is feeling a little down, maybe vomiting, not eating, and you're thinking to yourself, 2 weeks ago she was rolling around in the mud and drinking it, then it may warrant a trip to your veterinarian just to have it checked out rather than letting it go undetected. And I think with any zoonotic disease, leptospirosis and all the other ones, just weighing the risk versus benefit of the interactions with your dog. They bring so much to our lives and are such wonderful companions. But at the end of the day, you do have to remember that they are an animal and they are carrying all sorts of gross stuff that we don't want to get from them. So just it's maybe petting them would give you the same benefit than letting them lick you all over your face and in your mouth, and especially when we think of really young children or immunocompromised individuals that are even more at risk. So thank you.